No child ever dreamed of becoming an executioner. So how did these men carry out their grim duty? What tools did they use to deliver death? Beheading was considered one of the more merciful executions, but it wasn't always quick. A skilled executioner could take a head off in one strike. A less skilled one? Well, some prisoners endured multiple blows before death finally took them. The gallows hanging was another common method, but it wasn't as simple as tying a rope. If the drop was too short, the condemned would strangle the death slowly, kicking and jerking for minutes. If it was too long, the head could snap off completely. The executioner had to calculate the height, the weight of the prisoner, and the length of the rope, too much or too little, and the result was a gruesome disaster, the fate of traitors. The executioner would first hang the victim, but not to death, just enough to make them weak. Then he would cut open their stomach and pull out their intestines while they were still alive. Finally, their bodies were pulled apart by horses. It wasn't just a punishment, it was a spectacle. Burning at the stake. Most famously used in witch trials, this method was as much about terror as it was about killing. Some burned quickly, but others suffered for hours, screaming as the flames slowly consumed them. Executioners sometimes placed wet wood near the flames to make the fire burn slower, dragging out the agony, but the executioner's work didn't end at killing. He was also responsible for torture, extracting confessions before sentencing, the rack, the Iron Maiden, the thumb screws. These were his tools as well. It took a special kind of person to do this job. Some executioners took pride in their skill, perfecting their craft like a butcher slicing meat. Others drank themselves into numbness to forget the screams. Perhaps the most famous executioner of all time, Charles-Henri Sanson, was responsible for over 3,000 executions during the French Revolution. His most notorious victim, King Louis XVI himself. Despite his gruesome profession, Sanson was known for his professionalism and even his compassion. He believed executions should be quick and humane, an ironic belief for a man who operated the guillotine almost daily. But despite his skill, the burden of killing eventually broke him. Later in life, he confessed that the revolution's bloodshed haunted him, and he struggled to live with what he had done. Unlike Sanson, Franz Schmidt wasn't just a killer, he was a writer, a 16th century German executioner. Schmidt documented every execution he performed. His journal detailed over 361 executions, from beheadings to burnings, along with the crimes of his victims. But what made Schmidt unique was his desire to cleanse his family name. He didn't want to be remembered as a butcher, but as a man who upheld justice. And in an extremely rare case, he was actually granted a pardon in his old age, something almost unheard of for executioners. Not all executioners were skilled. Jack Ketch, an English executioner in the 1600s, was infamous for botching executions. His most famous failure, the beheading of Lord Russell in 1683. Ketch swung his axe and missed. He swung again and again. It took multiple attempts before Russell finally died, leaving the crowd horrified. He repeated the same mistake later with the Duke of Monmouth, hacking at his neck 5 times, before finally using a knife to finish the job. His name became so infamous that even after his death, Jack Ketch became a term for executioners in England, synonymous with incompetence and cruelty. But no matter how skilled or infamous an executioner was, they all faced the same fate, a life of isolation, a reputation that could never be erased, and often a tragic end. Executioners weren't just feared, they were believed to be cursed. Superstitions surrounded them. Some thought touching an executioner would bring bad luck. while others believed they had supernatural powers. Despite this rejection, executioners were essential. Kings and lords needed them. Justice needed them. But no one wanted to admit it. They were necessary evils, forever trapped in a role that society despised but could not live without. But among them, some became legendary. There were those whose names struck fear into criminals, and those who recorded their gruesome work with chilling detail. These men didn't just execute, they became infamous. Executioners lived in the shadows of society, and when their careers ended, few had a peaceful retirement. Many executioners became victims of the same justice system they once served. If the monarchy or government changed hands, they could easily find themselves on the chopping block. Some were even executed by their own apprentices, a cruel twist of fate that proved no one was safe, not even the man with the axe. Others attempted to erase their past, moving to new towns, changing their names, or taking up new trades. But the stain of being an executioner never truly faded. The moment people discovered their past, they were shunned once again. As societies evolved, public executions became less frequent. By the 19th and the 20th centuries, the role of the executioner was fading. The guillotine, the gallows, and the axe were replaced by more modern methods like the electric chair and lethal injection. Executions were now hidden behind closed doors, away from the public eye. The executioner was no longer a feared figure in the town square. He became a faceless operator, a man whose identity was buried in government secrecy. The age of the hooded executioner was over, and so the medieval executioner walks off into history, his axe silent, his name forgotten. Executioners were necessary, yet cursed, hated, yet indispensable. And while their profession has faded, their legacy of justice, horror, and human cruelty remains a chilling reminder of the past. So the next time you read about medieval justice, remember, behind every execution, there was a man holding the blade, and his life was often more tragic than the people he executed. While most executioners remained nameless, hidden behind their hoods, some became legends in their own right. Whether through sheer brutality, efficiency, or the sheer number of lives they took, these men left a permanent stain on history.